Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on coping with stress, how to bounce back from setbacks. This webinar has been specially designed to help you build resilience. Resilience is the ability to dust ourselves off when we fall and move on with our life with relative ease. While this sounds easy, developing resilience requires several changes to be made in our beliefs, a lot of introspection, making difficult decisions, and several other aspects. In this webinar, you will learn about stress, scientific coping techniques, and tips to build your own resilience. Without much further ado, let me introduce our esteemed expert, Ms. Reshmi Sahadevan. Reshmi is a clinical psychologist and life coach with 8 years of therapy experience. She has an MPhil in clinical psychology from the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Bangalore. She is currently the head of psychological services at Silver Oak Health. Health collaborates with renowned clinical psychologists and research institutions around the world to develop digital products in India. Silver Oak Health's diverse emotional wellness programs are focused at building resilience and dealing with health and behavioral challenges. Before we begin, I would like to remind you all that you can send in your questions using the questions section on the control panel to the right of your screen during the course of the webinar. We will take these up one by one post Reshmi's talk. Our best attempt would be to answer as many questions. We hope that you enjoy the webinar and take some key learning which you can implement immediately. I would now like to hand over to Reshmi.
Hello, this is Reshmi, and I'll be just getting into the topic right away. Today our topic is basically how to cope with stress and how to bounce back from setbacks, which is basically what resilience is all about. And I'm just going to start by just telling you a little bit about our company, which is Silver Oak Health. And Silver Oak Health basically uses cognitive science as a way of developing products. And basically our motto or basically our goal is that mental health is serious and it is a serious issue. But we'd also like it to be fun and make products that are cool in a way that people like to engage in conversation about mental health. So as you can see on the slide, there is stress control online, and we have an app called TRANQUIL, and there is also an assessment that's called HRQOL, which by the end of the webinar you'll have some more idea about. All right. Yeah. Now we go on to what is stress. So stress basically, as all of you know, there are many definitions for stress. But most of all, I think of stress as if there's some pressure that we put on something, and if our coping skills are deficit, then there would be more stress for a person whose coping skills are lesser, as compared to someone whose coping skills are a little more higher. And in our culture, in generally, because we don't learn about mental health or how to cope with things in colleges or schools, our ability to take stress immediately as we get into a job is when it actually hits you. When you move away from home or you get into a new job, that it starts to affect you. Then you start feeling more stressed out, because till then, sometimes stress, we don't know the effects of stress because you're always around friends, or there's you belong to a community and things like that. And the other thing about stress is that how does it affect your creativity? So in terms of, so creativity is basically about, like, when you look at a problem, you come up with, numerous solutions. And in terms of when we're being creative, we want to think out of the box. And what stress does to you is that it makes you think of three basic, responses, which is the fight, flight, and fight system. And these, when you have only three choices, especially when you're having a problem in your work and things like that, you want to be able to, that's when you want to be creative. But what happens sometimes is that you get into the fight mode where you're getting argumentative or defensive, or there's a flight mode where you take sick leaves, or you just don't want to work, or you want to sit at home, or you just you have the time but you don't want to work. Or there is a freeze response where most often you are just working as you did before, which is okay, but especially when there's a stressful situation, it requires you to change your routine way of dealing with situations. And coming to the next point, which is basically that when we are under chronic stress, it affects you by having physical and emotional health related issues. Including chronic stress leads to chronic health problems like increased blood pressure, cholesterol, and all of the other lifestyle related disorders as well. And I think the other thing that sort of for me makes me feel like that is important is that it doesn't allow you to be present. And I think that in the various workshops that I've done before, sometimes we forget why we are working, or why am I really doing this. So the reason I work, or the reason I'm trying to find some meaning in the work I do, is so that I can be present, I can live my life, or I can start to feel what it's like to hug my kid, or able to have like a really rich conversation with a spouse or a friend. And this is why I work so hard, because I want to start to be alive and be able to do the things that I want to do. And I think I've had people in workshops say, finally what they want to achieve through working is they want to travel, they want to explore, and things like that, which if you are stressed out, it doesn't allow you to pursue any of these higher meaning or higher values that you have. And of course, organizationally, it leads to a loss of productivity and efficiency. All right. So to add to this, so the stress is an external issue. And to add to this, our brains are hardwired to have certain habits. And this is true for all of us. The first one being multitasking, that we basically, we cannot do just one thing. We just feel like the sense of like I'm missing out on something. And I give this example often that, as a psychologist, I need to read. This is part of my job, that I need to, make sure that I am up to date in, psychological concepts. So I need to read. But whenever I start to, set the stage to read, I take a book and I sit. Then I have this like sort of thing in the back of my head that what is on TV? I just want to look at what's on TV, and then I think I just kind of look at like what's on TV, and then at the end of the situation, basically I'm neither watching TV nor am I reading a book. So multitasking, though it's important to do it in some ways because it helps us to do many things at the same time. It prevents us from being really present and really feeling and really sort of being there as you're reading the book, for example. The other thing that our brains are so used to doing is the autopilot. And these are not, bad habits or good habits. It's just things our brains do because they have like an advantage as well. For example, when we all learn to walk, or you've seen children walk, it is a painful process for them. They fall, they get up, and then for a while they give up walking for a while, and then again they try when they're ready. But now we don't think about it. It's an autopilot. It's on autopilot, right? And many of the things that we do. And I find that a lot of people, when we go traveling or we take a holiday, or they are able to see suddenly, certain things that they haven't seen before, or they switch out of their autopilot because you're doing different things. Like you no longer have to wake up at 5 o'clock because you don't have to go for work. You're traveling, so you can wake up a little later, like 9, and then you can think about what you want to eat, or where do you want to go and what do you want to see, right? So you switch out of your autopilot mode during that time. But this happens very far and in between. I mean, we don't travel as often. And so when we're in the autopilot mode, what happens is essentially every day of my life is similar to every other day. So sometimes we find ourselves waking up, brushing your teeth, taking a bath, having food, going to work, having lunch, talking to a few people, coming back home, and then having dinner and sleeping. So every day seems similar to the last day. So if there's nothing else that happens, then most of the things I do, which I just mentioned, are on autopilot. So I'm not really present. I'm basically, it would seem like I'm sleepwalking through life. So even if, all of the participants who are here, if you think about last week, what did I do? I'm sure you will remember one or two things, but it's very difficult to remember exactly what happened, on, say, on Friday or on Tuesday. What happened, right? It's very difficult because most of it we've been on autopilot. And this, it does not help when we're stressed out, because when you're stressed out, we want to come out of the autopilot mode so that we can make decisions and so that we can change our usual way of functioning to deal with the stressful situation. And the other habit of the mind is that we constantly focus either on the past or on the future. And this is not a bad thing, again, because we need to think about our past so that we don't, make those mistakes again. And we need to plan for our future so that we are prepared in some ways. But basically, all the generative, creative sort of thoughts come from the present. And an example of that is if you think about Newton, for example, the way he developed gravity, he was under an apple tree. So he was not in his past where, in a math lab or something like that, where he was doing his, experiments and things like that. Nor was he thinking about, I have to finish it, otherwise I have to figure out this thing, otherwise I wouldn't get any investments or whatever it is. So he's really in the present there. And it's only then that he was removed from the past and the future that this thought came to him, because I'm sure apples have been dropping for a long time. It's him that sort of figured this out because he was neither, associated with his past or his future. And so present thinking is very much like the core of resilience, where when you think from your present, it's only then that you can break away from these habits and come up with like a creative solution to the problem that you're facing. All right, so before we just go into resilience, maybe I'd like all of you to kind of, where you think about like a person who, and just the poll open, and you can just, do you feel like this person has gone through hardships in his life? This, I'll just give you a few moments to kind of tell me what you think about that. All right. Right. So all right. All right. So I think we have the results here. So we have people who say that nobody says that people who have no trauma or no hardships are resilient people. And this is important. I think that sometimes, even though we know this, unless we think about it, we sometimes even hate that we have problems, right? When we have problems, we're like, no, I don't like this, and but it is an opportunity to be resilient. So 24% said less than most people, and 45% said as much as most people, and we have like a close second where this says 31% more than most people. And I'm with the opinion that it is as much as most people or more than most people, because unless you have something that's happened to you, the resilience happens in your reaction to something. And it's not just about overcoming, but that it changes you, it transforms you, and you use it to transform yourself. So now, just going back to like what is resilience. So resilience is basically the process of adapting well. And when I say adapting well, it means to withstand whatever is happening and to recover from it by doing whatever is required. And the last process is to grow. So which is what I mentioned about transformation. And if you think about the very many resilient people that you know, famous people, and even people you know, they're all people who've not had like an easy life. They've had, hardships like you and me. So we have that capacity, just like them, to be resilient. All right. And I think the other thing that I think here, yes. All right. So I just go into this in a little, in not too much detail. So this is a concept called neuroplasticity, and the reason I bring this up, which about the brain, is because most of the coping mechanisms that I'm going to go through, is based on neuroplasticity. Basically, the thing is, this works to change your brain, right? It's not something that I'm just telling you based on this is what I feel like, but this is based on neuroscience. And so neuroplasticity basically refers to the ability of the brain to be reshaped by our thoughts and experiences. Okay, just a second. Yeah. Yeah. So it refers to the ability of our brain to be reshaped by our thoughts and experiences. And that basically means is that anything that you spend a lot of time doing, that becomes the neural circuitry in your brain that's extremely active. So if you spend a lot of time worrying, that's what's written there, the more we worry, the better we get at worrying, right? So if we think certain types of thoughts, it strengthens those type of circuits. So if we spend a lot of time thinking positively, for example, those positive circuitries also improve, right? And the more we stay in a particular emotional state, or thoughts or memories, those networks get stronger. So how can we make the neural circuitry of resilience a lot more stronger than the neural circuitry of negative thinking and stress-based thinking? Um, All right. So the first sort of method is to, it's based on the same thing what I mentioned about the neural circuitry. So we have the neural circuitry that tells us these things which are not useful at all, especially when we're stressed out. There's a sense of, this is just so, you can't do it. This always happens to you. Or if you're standing to talk to someone, there's always this feeling that they don't like you, they think they're very bored, you're not good enough, and things like that, which is basically the stressed voice. And then there is the common sense voice. And usually when we are stressed out, the common sense voice is sort of muted, and you can't really hear it as much as you'd like to. And the stressed voice is really loud, and you start to believe that, right? So if at the onset of stress, if we can just sort of categorize them as just like, is this my stressed voice or is this my common sense voice? And you can tell the content of the stressed voice will be extremely critical and does not do anything to help you and just makes you feel worse about yourself. And just the act of consciously being aware and monitoring which is your stressed voice and which is your common sense voice, and paying attention to your common sense voice more than your stressed voice just helps. So just monitoring your thoughts as to which is which. And if it's a stressed voice, can I step back from it? Can I take a pause and step back? And so that the common sense, I can start to hear my common sense voice, right? And I give you an example for this. I think many a times we have work-related pressures where we don't do well, and sometimes it is our fault, and then the stress voice tells you it is our fault in terms of we didn't do it well or something like that. But then the stressed voice, what it tells you is you're always like this, you're always lazy, and you never do work well, and this always happens to you. Why didn't you do what I told you to do? Things like that, which are extremely difficult to hear at that time. So you feel like a failure. So, the voice tells you that you're a failure, right? And if you take a step back, meaning you literally pause for a while, you will start to hear the common sense voice. You will start to hear that it's not happened in a long while. Yeah, this was my fault, but this has not happened before, right? And it has happened once in 10 times, right? And this sort of voice, like, so even the thing that, okay, it's my fault because of this, but I can correct that, right? So it seems more like a friend, really. The common sense voice will really feel like a friend who's really trying to make you feel better. And that's how you can tell, and to pay more attention to the common sense voice, and just to start by monitoring them. All right. So the other method to sort of deal with stress and worries is sometimes, even in therapy, I've had clients who tell me about that they're constantly worrying about everything, whether the Uber driver will come, or whether they will be able to do their work, or why hasn't my husband or wife picked their phone? Is something happening to them? Did something happen? Things like that. So the constant worry about your health, other people's health, why things happen on time? Does all of these worries, and they're not able to control it. And a lot of times this is because they have not really given, and none of these are like invalid worries, because yes, you must be worried about your health. We must worry about the health of our loved ones. We must do things on time. This is important as well. So can I be more responsible in the way, or can I make my worry more voluntary, right? Because every time a worry comes, I'm trying to block it or reject it, right? So as I block it and reject it, what I'm doing is I'm paying a lot more attention to my worry than I think. So I actually, by blocking it, I want to forget it. But the way our brain works is when I intentionally do something like blocking and rejecting my worry, the brain starts to think that, oh, this person actually loves this worry, and we need to give it back to this person from time to time. So the way to deal with that would be to postpone that. Like, one would be what we did the other time, that just to categorize it. What kind of worry is this? Is it a practical worry where there is a solution? Or is it a hypothetical worry? Like, what would happen if this happened? A worry like that. So can I categorize it first? And then can I postpone it? Can I keep a time where I keep for worrying? Like, and when I'm usually relaxed, like if I keep the time between 7:30 and 8 in the evening, can I push my worries to that time where I will start to think about it? So can I push it to that time? But this is actually very, very difficult to do. So after I categorize it, I have to put a lot of energy in refocusing to the present. So this is important. So when I'm worrying about something, I'm either in my past or in my future, I need to really refocus. So I tell myself that I have put a time to worry. So I will worry during that time. But right now, I need to focus on my present. So if today I'm doing a presentation or I'm watching a movie as the worry comes in, I really focus on the movie, right? Or I'm outside, I really focus on the wind and what I can feel on my body as I walk, right? So I refocus in the present and slowly it dies down. And when the time comes to worry at 7:30, there are things that you have to ask, like, do I still want to worry? Is it still something that needs to be sort of worked out? And if that's the case, can I spend some time on that? But if the answer is, you know what, it's not sounding so urgent right now, I don't really need to worry, then that I don't do that at that time. So this is found to be reduce worry over time because the worry circuit doesn't get lit up in our brain constantly, like throughout the day, and it only gets lit up during 7:30 and 8, for example, right? So by over time, that circuit of worry kind of dies down, and we have a new circuit which is based on problem solving and really supporting yourself as you worry. All right. All right. So the other method that we use to be sort of resilient is called mindfulness. And mindfulness is basically the ability to sort of focus on the present with intention, with no judgment. So what this means is like to consciously and intentionally pay attention to whatever is happening to you right now, which means whatever is happening to your body, whatever is happening around you, the sounds around you, all of those things, moment to moment with no judgment. So for example, even to my thoughts. So if I have a thought, there is no sense of like, I don't want to think about that, that's just too much, or it's a bad thought, or it's a good thought. There is no judgment on the kind of thought that I'm having. And it helps us to be fully awake in our lives. And I think what's interesting about mindfulness is it's based on the concept, because most often we always feel that we are the constantly things to fix about ourselves. Like, I need to fix this about ourselves or people around us. We need to fix that. We need to fix this. I need to fix something about me. But mindfulness is based on the sort of liberating concept that instead of thinking about ourselves as damaged and broken and difficult, that we think about ourselves as already being whole and okay. So this doesn't mean that we don't work on ourselves. It just means that we need to just peel off a few layers to see the wisdom that we already have. So this is a little heartening, because sometimes we think that we need to learn more to be able to deal with things, but it is actually a process of peeling off outer layers to get into the inner wisdom that we all have about our lives, right? We know most about our lives than anybody else, and so the process of sort of uncovering layers of adversity and trauma that we've all gone through. And mindfulness as a concept is not something that we haven't done. So sometimes when we travel, or sometimes when we have like a really happy or a negative moment, we're suddenly very vividly aware of everything around us. So if you travel, you may have noticed the sunset. Suddenly you notice it, and you're spellbound by the beauty of it. But the sunset or the sunrise is right here in Bangalore itself. We don't have to travel so many miles to see the sunset. So what would it be like to see that every day? And so mindfulness is not something that we have not done. It's just that if you do it like that once in a while, it doesn't create any changes in your brain. It's just an experience then. But for it to be a skill that we can use to be more resilient, it needs to be practiced every day. Just like, for example, when we know that running is good, but if I run once in a while to get a packet of milk from the grocery, um, that's good. You get the milk, but will it improve your cardiac health? Not really. So it needs to be done every day or constantly, consistently for you to start. Just like running, mindfulness is a skill that if you practice, it's available for you when you're stressed out. All right. So right. Now go on to, yeah. I want to share like one of the exercises that you can do to sort of start being more mindful is the practice of stop. It basically means to pause, right? One of the things that you have to do is S, which is stop. Basically, stop everything that you're doing, and then you take a few breaths. This doesn't have to be deep. You can have a few deep breaths if that helps to calm you down. So you can have a few deep breaths and then start to breathe more gently. And then you do O, which is observe. So you observe your breath and your thoughts and your emotions, right? And you do this for a few seconds, and then you go with proceed. So proceed basically where you ask yourself, what is important for me to pay attention to right now? And you ask this to yourself. So you stop everything you're doing, take a few breaths, observe your thoughts, emotions, and your bodies, and you proceed with whatever is important for you to pay attention to right now. And whatever comes up, so when I say comes up, I mean like an inner wisdom. If there's something that comes up, that says just chill, don't do anything. If that's what comes up, you go with that. Or if what comes up is an image, then you go with that. Just try to figure out what that is. Why did that come up, right? Sometimes it's not that direct that what you have to proceed with, but that you accept whatever is coming up and try to figure out what that meant, right? So this is one of the exercises. The other exercise is called soften, soothe, and allow. So here we have basically an exercise which talks about how to deal with difficult emotions. So I'm sure most of you, all of us like happiness. We like joy. We like all of the positive emotions, right? Calmness. And we try to stick on to them for more, longer than we can. Like even when we're, something has happened, it makes me angry or makes you angry, we want to be calm, right? But what happens with that is because we reject it, we reject our negative emotions. Sometimes what happens is that it finds different ways of expressing itself. Through just, like you showing up later to work. It could be, it's not very conscious. So it shows up in other ways which damages your relationships with people, if you're not careful. So how do we deal with these difficult emotions? So the way that I like to think about it is if you were holding a cup of hot tea, as in the picture, you can see how the hot tea, you never hold it with all of your hand because then you get burnt. So you hold it very gently, really gently, right? And then you probably blow on the liquid because it needs to cool down a bit. And you're not intending to blow out the whole thing, but just the top of it so you can sip, right? So you kind of soften towards it. You move towards the emotion to figure out what's happening there. Can I make you feel a little more better? What's happening there? Can I take a look, right? And so you blow on the tea and then you soothe. Soothe meaning that you take a sip, right? You never gulp the tea. You take a small sip to sort of test out. And you'll also find that as you're starting to drink the tea also sort of allows you to drink it. So it's both ways. You also are testing out whether it's cool enough to drink. The tea also sort of cools down enough so you can drink it. So the emotions that are difficult, the way that you deal with that is that, you know, sometimes the way we hold it is if there's anger, you just close your hands around it. The brain closes around it and you go into a fear response because anything that you hold that tightly around in your fist, one is that you cannot see it, so then it's fearful. And second is that it's held so tightly that you don't have any space to do anything else because one hand is already engaged. So that part of the brain is always engaged in keeping that anger or jealousy or any other negative emotion in check. So you're not free to do other things, right? So you're holding on really tightly. Well, what you know I'm talking about here is to look at the emotion. You open your palm. You don't touch it, but you look at it. So as you open your palm and you look at your anger, and if it's too painful, to step back a bit, right? So as you would do with tea, right? You just leave it to cool a bit if it's too hot, right? You leave it to cool a bit and then you go back again and look at it from all sides to try and understand it. Like, what is that about? Where does that come from? And asking these questions rather than, you're bad, I don't want you, I don't want to deal with this. And those are not the questions because those are critical in nature, right? And the questions are more like, what is this about? Why are you here? How are you trying to help me? Or how have you helped me in the past? And these are the questions we try and ask, which are more reflective in nature and comes from a place of curiosity, which is a part of mindfulness, where there is some openness and curiosity towards what the problem is. All right. And this is the last coping skill that I'll be talking about. It's called hunt the good stuff. So this is, we do a small little exercise here where, I want you to write down maybe one good thing that's happened to you today. So if all of you have a paper and pencil somewhere lying around, just to write down one thing that has happened that was good for you today. Like one good thing. All right. And now if you're ready to write down, and the next few questions are to do with that good thing that you've written down, is a reflective exercise where to think about, why did this good thing happen? Why did it happen today? Why did this happen? And now the next question is, what this good thing means to you, right? Now this question, basically what it means is, why is this a good thing for you and maybe not for others, Like, why is it so special for you? What does this good thing mean to you? So I'll give you a few more minutes to kind of write down. Right. The next question is what you could do tomorrow to enable more of this good thing. So what can you do tomorrow to enable that this happens more often for you? Because this is a good thing. And the last question is, what are ways in which you or others can contribute to this good thing sort of happening more often for you? Like, is there something somebody else can do for you so that you have this good thing? Or is there something you can do to make sure that, this happens for you more often? Right. So this is a method in which basically what we're trying to say here is basically our brain has a negativity bias. So what that means is this is also the reason. So again, it's not a bad thing. It is the reason we are the most in number in the form of any species on the planet is because we've had negativity bias, which means that if we see something or the interpretation is mostly negative. And this is the way our brain works, and that has helped us from being the most successful species because if I'm looking like millions of years ago, if a blade of grass moved, immediately I'm thinking it's a tiger or a lion or an elephant. And I'm not thinking, oh, that's so beautiful. And, because those people may not have lasted at that time. It's the people that out of 10 times, if it was a tiger, you would be the one surviving them, because you thought it was a tiger. So it was very important then, but now that bias is not so important because we no longer live in a jungle. There's not so much fear about our life. I mean, we are, quite safe in that sense. So to kind of build the positivity bias as well. How can I think about the good stuff first? Right? And this we have to practice because we're not used to it, or we're not, it doesn't come naturally to us. So the way to do that is by thinking of 3 good things that have happened to you during the day, as you, maybe in the evening, or, or before you sleep at night, you write them. And to spend some time reflecting about it, which means, like, why did this happen to me today? And why is it, a good thing for me and not for others? Like, why is this really, really important to me? And what can I do to get more of this? And is there anything anybody else can do so that I can get more of this? Right? And so over time, just continuously doing this kind of helps you kind of shift the bias to more of a positive, side, wherein when you're dealing with a stressful situation, you are able to think of like the positive aspects of it, rather than only the negative. All right. So the coping mechanisms that we talked about today was based on cognitive behavior therapy, mindfulness, and positive psychology. And this, I think I put up this slide just to help all of you sort of go back. If you want to Google and things like that, these are the keywords to use. If you want to know more coping mechanisms within the frameworks that I just talked about, like if you like the last one, then you might try positive psychology methods to deal with stress. And there are like loads of them that talk about concepts like compassion, gratitude, that help you build that aspect of your coping skills. But if you like the mindfulness bit, to kind of type mindfulness, and if you like the more practical approaches, then you can try cognitive behavior therapy. Now, we as a company kind of built Stress Control Online, which is India's first online CBT program, which has concepts of both, mindfulness as well as positive psychology sort of built into it, to cope with stress and to build resilience. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. So CBT actually, or cognitive behavior therapy, actually talks about how our action is the product of the situation, our thoughts about the situation, our emotions, and which finally lead to the behavior. So most often we cannot change our behavior by just changing one thing. Like, for example, if I'm sad and I say, I'm just going to be happy, you can't do that. You have to change the other things as well. You have to change the situation, you have to change your behavior, you have to, or you have to take an action towards that, and you could change it. Or, for example, I want to stop, I'm going to eat healthy from now on. Okay, and so that's a behavior, and we cannot change that behavior of eating unhealthy by just stopping. So we have to change, for example, our thoughts, because a lot of our thoughts will be about like our identity as a person who loves food, right? So unless I change that identity about myself, I can't stop, I can't stop eating unhealthy food, or any other sort of habit like drinking alcohol or smoking. We cannot change simply by stopping. It's possible to try, but you might find that the fact that you stopped and then you were able to continue that is because there have been other factors involved as well. So either that you have changed your thoughts about it, and you could do this by yourself, where you change your thoughts about it, or you would have gotten more support for, or you would have changed your office, like the situation, where you would have changed the workplace into another workplace where there smoking is not allowed, so it becomes easier for you to quit, right? So the changing the behavior alone, or changing one thing alone, is very, very difficult, and it may last, but it will be short term, right? The important thing is to, if you want to change something, that you change the other aspects as well. Yeah. So cognitive behavior therapy works on changing your behavior by changing your thought process, or making you aware of the emotion that led to that, or by changing the situation that triggers the behavior. Now, stress control online is an easy way to sort of learn these coping skills. One, because it's a structured program, so it's extremely evidence-based, and there's a personal coach. So there's an 8-session online program which you can watch from the convenience of your home. And after each session, there'll be a personal coach that you can call up and talk to, and the coach will try to customize the problem or the stresses in your life as to how it may apply to you, and how you could use the program. And it's built for India because we've used examples of Indian people in the program, and it's very, very identifiable and relatable because of that. Yeah, and this is like a certificate. Once you finish the 8-week online program, we present this as a certificate that you can and that we will mail you. And I think it's always really nice to have something, because it is an educational program. So at the end of this, you get a certificate, which is also, I think, quite important in terms of the way the workplace issues are going. We want more and more people who are resilient to be at the top of our workplace, and people who make those decisions are resilient people, and that kind of inspires other people as well to adopt skills that they use, and be resilient as well. We've also developed an app called TRANQUIL. It's called TRANQUIL Mindfulness. It's available on Google Play as well as on the iPhone. I'll tell you a little bit about. So in the app there's guided tracks. So basically that means that we have various mindfulness tracks that you can listen to, and there will be a voice that's guiding you towards what to do in the session. So there will be close your eyes and all of those things. And as you can see, I think if you can see in your screen, there's soften, soothe, and allow, which I spoke about today. Which if you want to try out, it's there on our app. And then there are unguided tracks, and this is just generally for times when you feel like you just want to pause or you want to relax. This has sounds of nature that help you do that. And then we have reflections. So it's always good to do what we just did today, where you do something and you reflect about it. What did you feel about it? Why did it help you feel a certain way? Just your reflection about the activity. So if you did one of like soften, soothe, and allow, what did you think about it? And how has this helped you today? Or has it helped you today? Or has it made you feel even more conflicted about dealing with your emotions. And for those people who like a more structured approach, we have a 7, 10, and 21-day program that you can go through. And you have different tracks every day. So you can go through these tracks and programs based on your need. So if your need is for sleep or if your need is for relaxation, you can choose the program for that. And if your need is for learning mindfulness, then we have like a program for that. All right, so I think we're done, and yes, we can have questions if there are any.
Thank you, Reshmi. Thank you for that wonderful session. Before we move on to the questions, I'd just like to notify the audience that there are a couple of downloadable items available in the handout section on your control panel, which you can refer to later whenever you want to read more about stress and stress control. So, beginning with the first question, we have a question which is respect to all the coping mechanisms you shared, Reshmi. So the question reads as, when dealing with emotionally charged situations, okay, it is very difficult to remember the tips that you have shared. Any advice from your side to manage this kind of a situation?
Well, to remember the coping skills or to deal with the situation? You said to deal with the situation, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yes, to deal with the situation.
Okay. Okay. So it always gets, see, coping skills and things like that are easier to use when you take a step back from the situation. So one of the things that sort of helps is to really take a step back and, you know, either literally, like you move to another room to think about how you want to deal with it, or even mentally to kind of take a step back and think about, or just to, which we spoke about, like to access your common sense voice, right? So if you've had a emotional or conflicting situation with your manager and things like that, it would be best to also remember that this they're all working in the same organization, they want the same thing. How can I best deal with this person? And if the stressed voice is telling you more often, like, this always happens to you, and he's a mean person, he does this, and then I think the way that you would interact with the manager would not do anything to improve the situation. So I think one of the things is basically to take a step back and think about what technique or what coping mechanism that you can use here. And I think that sometimes when we get emotionally charged, or like you said, emotionally charged, we kind of see that as stress. But there's been a lot of research by a psychologist named Kelly McGonigal, where she talks about the stress response also being the response of courage. So sometimes when you think about courage, it also has a physical biology for courage, sometimes mimics stress. And if we're able to think of stress as actually it's us being courageous, like it's sort of helping us understand that we need to do something here, or we need to step back and we need to think about what to do. And it's actually courage that's happening here. It's our body's way of preparing to fight or preparing to help ourselves. And that sometimes helps because the minute I know that I'm stressed out, it stresses me out even more, right? And that's not a good thing, because then I don't handle the situation very well. I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm sure the person who asked it would be able to give us a better feedback later. Moving on to the next question, we have a person here, a lady who says that she has been chronically stressed and also has adrenaline rush when she's happy. Saps off all her energy, and as a result, she is facing chronic health issues. She's asking how should she change that? and also she's facing issues with her mother-in-law, the typical expectation mismatches and the generation gap related issues, and she's just seeking advice of how she can change that.
Okay, so I think there are two, three questions there. So I try and cover, I think basically what she's saying is the adrenaline rush. And it's called, I think what she said, what she's talking about is also called, there's a lot of fatigue whenever there's a lot of adrenaline rush because of the stress that your body is exposed to. That you feel sort of fatigued, and there's these, health-related issues that you have. That make it very difficult to deal with something, in a nice way. So, but I think that emotionally, I think when you think about stress, it is important to, kind of. I think what she spoke about in the end is actually her stressful situation that she's in, where there is a mismatch between her expectations of the kind of life that she was supposed to lead, as well as what her mother-in-law expected. So there seems to be the crux of the whole thing, is that's the stressful situation she's in. And I think that sometimes the way that we express, that we cannot deal with this anymore, is sometimes through physical symptoms, especially if nobody's listening. So I don't know this woman that you're talking about, but I would suggest that she try to talk to someone who actually listens here, because it does feel like, because she's not talking to someone that listens, that her body goes into these physical reactions, where then she gets the care that she needs sometimes. Like, I think maybe the mother-in-law is a little less, expects less of her if she's really unwell, or maybe her husband or somebody else is more caring of her, because she's so unwell. But on the other hand, if she were to talk about her mother-in-law, or if she were to, talk about her mother-in-law to her husband, maybe that might not go so well. So I think my suggestion is most possibly not to talk to somebody who is emotionally invested here, because I think it might be difficult for her to get what she needs from a husband, from a support perspective, but possibly to talk to someone who be able to see where she comes from, and once she feels heard, and once she feels like somebody understands, some of those physical symptoms might come down. But I think it's a long-term issue as well, that she needs to think about, what can I do about this in the long run? Because I think it's very difficult to be in that situation where there's too many expectations and she can't fulfill all of them, and she's falling sick, to indicate that she cannot fulfill all of them.
Okay, makes sense. So for the next question, we have something that we kind of covered in the previous webinar as well. A gentleman says that he's read a lot of studies about how change companies, not because of the job, but because of the bosses. And if in a team, there's a situation where majority people are changing companies due to the boss's behavior, how do others who want to stay in that team, change the boss's behavior? I'm not sure whether, this is...
Yeah, that's like a difficult. It's really like, it's interesting, that question, because it seems to me almost like, if my parents are fighting, then what can I do about it? Like, the kids are asking, how can I make my parents stay together or something? It's interesting that way, because it is up to the parents, or it is up to the leaders, to be able to lead by role model. And it is heartening to see that the employees who are staying behind really want to change things so that they can stay. So I think there is a connection that they feel towards the leaders to want to stay. But I think that there's not much that can be done in terms of, like changing somebody else's behavior. unless they want to. And so, I mean, I think this is similar to a lot of people ask me about people that they know that they would like for them to come to therapy, and they ask me, how can I get them for therapy? There is really no easy answer for this, because they see the need for it, and as they tell me, I see the need for it as well. But I think what I tell them is, can you ask them, what is the problem? Like, what are the problems that you think that the company has? So, for example, in a conversation with a leader, you'd ask them, what do they think are the problems that they think they have in the company? And can we start dealing with those problems that they think they have? And not with the ones that probably I think you have. You get what I'm saying? Like, I might think that there is a problem in the company, but they may not agree. So to go with the problems that they agree with, and say, so you think this is a problem, all right, so can we start from there? Can we deal with that problem? Because I agree this is a problem, right? And to not start with the ones like, I think therapy most often, the way that people try to convince other people of therapy is by saying, you're not studying well. For example, for getting an adolescent for therapy, parents start with, you don't study well, and you're not doing this right, and you're not waking up on time, and things like that, which the adolescent doesn't really care about. So the way to ask that question is, do you think you have any issues? And so then they might say, you know what, I worry a lot and I can't get to sleep. All right, so would you like to see someone to deal with your worry and your sleep issue? So the others, that is him not studying and all of that, might come organically later once they start, trusting the therapist. So even with the leaders, I think once, the only thing you can do is to make them aware of, like, what are the problems that they think they have, and to start with, yes, I am on your side to work on that, and can we work on that?
Okay, so addressing their problems first would make sense, and
then
then
maybe go with, like, if you want to help them. But as you can see, a lot of people have left as well. So it is kind of interesting where to see what can be done here. Like, do we look after ourselves? Do we look after the leader? And which is why I said that was an interesting question. It's a lot like a parent-child sort of relationship where you cannot leave the parents. So you're asking, what can I do to change their relationship between them? And actually, it is supposed to be the other way around. The leaders are supposed to initiate change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the question itself is quite sad, that it has come to that, where the employee has to talk to the leader about issues.
Mm-hmm. So another question was there on the coping mechanisms, and the participant is saying that are there any hacks to deal with stressful situations, or is it generally a habit that needs to be developed in the long term? Can you do something quickly about it? Is what the question is.
Yeah, so the quick part, I think, is just the pausing, but I think the pausing also is a habit. So you need to get into the habit of it. I'd like to say that there are hacks, but it's never worked for me nor my clients. So I wouldn't want to, say something that I don't believe in. So I don't think that there are hacks, but I think that there are practices you can follow, reflections that you can do, that are more painful sometimes, and then it might lead to hacks. Yeah. So once you do the practice and you reflect and you go through the process, it becomes easier, and it becomes like a trick. It becomes like a hack that you can pull out and do that to deal with situations. But one of the things that they talk about resilience also is that when you're struggling and when you're stressed out, connecting with other people or reaching out to other people is definitely a component of resilience. So that's something that you can do almost immediately if you think of that as a hack. But I would think of that as just human behavior. But more and more, when we have social media and WhatsApp and things like that, we sometimes don't reach out to like a physical person, even though they're nearby. we're just posting on Facebook and things like that. And none of these places are places that we can talk about our struggles, really. So I think that maybe one of the things that you can do is, in stressful situations, to really reach out and connect to people around you.
So we'll take one or two questions more. I think then we are already overshot our time a little bit. So let's have the last few questions. So one person is asking is, how to cope with stress developed due to multitasking. So I'm assuming that he's talking about the level of workload that is, there, maybe delivering to deadlines and the whole work scenario.
Right. Um, well, the stress due to multitasking, sometimes it helps to prioritize what's the most important, and then go ahead and do that, and then go on to the next one. When we multitask, sometimes I think what we do is we do a lot of things at the same time without really realizing the priority of things. So sometimes that one thing might have a priority of being to be done with a lot more attention, and also to be, to pay more attention, as well as I think to be able to be done more, to be done more, I wouldn't say perfectly, but to be done with a lot more care, as opposed to others in which, if you miss a few things, it's okay. So to sort of prioritize, and you could do this, every day as well. Like, you come into work, before you come in, there are things that you can do in terms of just prioritizing your emails, or prioritizing the way that you would do your work. And there are many ways that people do this, and this depends on the individual as well. Like, sometimes the way people go with is the way that my boss has asked me to prioritize, that's the way I prioritize. And sometimes people go with, let's start with something easy on a Monday morning, because it's after Sunday, and then you go on to the harder ones. And some people are like, no, let me start with something hard and then go on to easy ones. So it depends on person to person, but as long as you realize that you're prioritizing it, that helps in being more present, and you find that you're more productive if you do it one by one.
Okay, that sounds good. I mean, I think that is the way to go. One, leading to this question, basically a kind of a sub question to this, another participant has asked is, since he is overburdened and there is a lot of work to do, if that results in him skipping hobbies and other activities which he enjoys. So he's wondering whether this could lead to a problem in the long term, and if there can be any suggestions around that.
I think this is again an interesting question, because I think the person who asked me the question already knows the answer to it, which is why he's asked me like a rhetorical question, really. If I don't spend time doing things I enjoy, will it lead to long-term stress? Yes, it will. So you need to prioritize yourself as well.
Making time for that is most essential, right, for your personal development. Okay, so that brings us to the last question for the webinar, and I think the audience would be quite interested for this one, which is, how do you find the motivation in yourself to commit to coping with your stress?
I don't think, Shreya, I don't think we really have a choice in that. I think that we think that we have a choice to deal with our stress later, and later and later, and pushing it around. But there is no choice, actually. The fact that we need to reflect, we need to process, we need to figure out ways to deal with stress. It's either today or tomorrow or long time from now. But the more time you take, the more time you suffer, and other people around you, your relationships, and your work suffers. So I think the basic motivation, if there is a problem about motivation in terms of, like, there is a problem, but I don't want to deal with it, and there is a lack of motivation there, to reflect about the lack of motivation. Like, why is it not there? Like, does that instance sort of remind you of something that's been painful, right? So the lack of motivation, what does it remind you of? Because it's probably something that you're constantly sort of fighting against, right? You're constantly fighting against the same thing, and then again you come up with the same problem. It feels a little defeating sometimes for most people. And so that you don't constantly like solve the same problems over and over again, you have to make sure you don't make the same mistakes again. And so for that, I think mindfulness and being reflective, meaning where this is coming from and why is this happening over and over again? These are questions that need to be asked, and it should come out of a space of curiosity and being open, and not from being critical, like this always happens to you, and you're no good and you're not good enough. But comes from a space of kindness and gentleness, that there is a sense of what can I do about it and so much of suffering, and can I figure out where this is coming from, and soothe myself in some ways. So I think that's, yeah, so the motivation, I think the lack of motivation in itself might be something that you might want to take a bigger look at, or a longer look at.
Okay. So thank you, Rashmi and Silver Oak Health for that wonderful webinar. I'm sure our audience has gained great insights and tools to implement immediately. Many thanks to all of our audience for being attentive and for those wonderful questions which have enriched this webinar for everyone. We at Univite are glad to bring to you a unique program by Silver Oak Health, which was introduced by Reshmi earlier, which is called Stress Control Online. This program will help you learn how to develop and actually not develop, deal with self-defeating thought patterns, actions, and body reactions related to stress. It has been proved that people who take this program are able to cope with stress in a very effective manner. And Reshmi and her colleagues will be guiding you through each phase of this 8-week program. For more details of this, please log in to univibeplus.com. That's UNIVIBEPLUS.com and type stress control in the search bar. Once again, thank you very much for joining us, and please don't forget to fill in the feedback at the end of the webinar. This will only help us deliver to your expectations. Have a great day and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.